in another 10 years, we can talk about it and I really understand what I was doing. I'm just living in it. I'm literally, kind of being as open as I possibly can to new ideas and how things are done versus how things were done. And I'm trying not to be a person who's so conditioned to my past that I'm not considerate of how things have to be done and are inevitably being done. Mystique is something that is good and bad. Like, because what I do struggle with now is the fact that I don't feel comfortable doing these kinds of interviews and talking because I don't really know the nature of where it's going to go. But I fuck with you. So I was like, I'm going to come sit down with you and we're going to have a real conversation. And I'm also, too, going to hopefully, be comfortable enough to be able to be vulnerable and talk about life. And, there's what you see and then there's who I am. And there's, some judgment that comes with that on the other side. But I don't really get concerned about that. I really am. I'm living my life and I'm trying to be a great artist, but greater than that, a good person and a human, right? I'm going to go through flaws, go through ups and downs. My entire career has, kind of shown you that. Whether I was talking about it in music or just living through things. I've had some really, really tough times and I've not had anybody to talk to about it. I've not had the opportunity to be able to kind of open up. That's why I really was so excited about this Audibles, because it gave me the opportunity to be able to kind of peel the veil back and allow you to look.
Tonight, we strip away the glittering surface of an industry built on dreams, only to find betrayal, control, and exploitation beneath. What began as a promising mentor-mentee bond spiraled into a dark saga, one that even Justin Bieber's mother, Patty Millette, may have sensed was dangerous from the start. How did it all go so wrong? And what part did Usher, once seen as a protector of rising talent, play in this unraveling story? Join us as we uncover disturbing revelations, map out key moments, and confront the uncomfortable truths about fame, power, and the devastating cost of misplaced trust.
Reportedly considered dropping Usher from his label, but when Usher begged him to stay on, Reed sent him to live with Sean Combs in New York for a year to train. And at the time, Combs, who was then known as Puff Daddy, we believe was in his 20s, there were these apparent training sessions. And these training sessions were known as Puffy Flavor Camp. Now, through the years, Usher has spoken about this time in his life with Combs. For example, in 2004, Usher told Rolling Stone that Combs introduced him to essentially sex. He said, quote, "Sex is so hot in the industry, man. There was always girls around. You'd open a door and see somebody doing it or several people in a room having an orgy. You never knew what was going to happen." On the Howard Stern show in 2016, Usher talked about his time with Combs too, saying there was definitely a lot of wild partying, but he doesn't think he was really able to understand what all was going on. And when Howard Stern asked him, would you send your own kids to something like Puffy Flavor Camp, this is what he had to say.
What a life.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
14 years old. You're a dad now. Would you ever send your kid to Puffy Camp?
Hell no.
See? Usher also spoke with People magazine back in February, saying some of the most valuable lessons I could ever learn as an entrepreneur were picked up when I spent that time in New York with him. This unwavering desire to create and make certain that your creative ideas are executed.
Now, Justin, like I just said, is in the headlines a bit. There's some people who are saying he's really having a tough time these days. He's having maybe even a breakdown. They see some different behavior from him. What do you say?
It's crazy the timing of all this because we've had these shows booked, for a couple of weeks for me to come on here and talk about Crescendo.
Yeah.
And, we couldn't have predicted all this stuff that just happened in the media. So, I really don't know what to say.
Are you worried about him at all?
I think moms always worry about their children.
Any extra worry now that he's 19 and people are, he's kind of out of the nest a little bit? Any extra worry?
Letting go, it's difficult. So I think that there's always an element of extra worry from parents that when they have to sort of let go a little bit.
I mean, because the thing I always wonder about is like, when you're 19, does your mom supposed to still dictate your friends? Like, do you worry about who he hangs with? Do you like sort of say to him like, I don't want you hanging with this person or that person?
You
don't have to tell me who. I don't need to know who. I'm not going to pry too much, but unless you really want to tell me. But
yeah, no, I mean, I try. Of course I have talks with him. Of course I have conversations with him about all that kind of stuff. But as his mom, I Yeah, the rules have changed now that he's
You're a little more hands off.
19. Well, I wouldn't say that.
Once a titan of the music industry, Diddy built an empire that promised fame and fortune, but beneath the glitz lay years of dark allegations. Accusations of rape, sex trafficking, and forced prostitution have haunted his legacy, and now, new revelations reignite scrutiny. Insiders recall a disturbing chapter: a 15-year-old Justin Bieber spending 48 hours at Diddy's mansion. A moment once glamorized as mentorship, now seen in a far more troubling light. What was once hailed as a rite of passage is being re-examined as a possible instance of exploitation no teen should ever experience.
Conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, transportation to engage in prostitution. That's an important charge we'll talk about in a minute. But in anticipation of that hearing Friday, here are some things that you should know, maybe what we can expect. We don't know for sure, but this is possible what is going to be addressed on Friday. Now, first up, we believe that Sean Combs is going to be officially arraigned on the second superseding indictment at this conference. Now, most likely he will be advised of his rights, the charges, most likely will enter a plea. And what is the most significant difference in this new indictment that was filed against him last week on March 6th is really one paragraph. I'm actually going to read you right now part of the government's letter to the court that was filed in conjunction with this superseding indictment, and it reads as follows. The S2 indictment contains no new charged offenses, but includes additional allegations related to the racketeering conspiracy charged in count 1. Specifically, the S2 indictment contains additional allegations as to the means and methods of the racketeering enterprise related to forced labor.
In the book, Porter allegedly recounts discovering and making copies of the sex tapes that Diddy made of himself having sex with young boys that he was managing, including an alleged tape involving an 18-year-old pop star who went on to become a household name. Porter alleges that when she discovered those videotapes of Sean and his sexual encounters in the bedroom in this vault, she made copies of them as protection for herself. Realized that this is a very dangerous situation. I'm going to make copies for protection for myself, and included it as a part of her plan to leave him. But the memoir says that when she watched back the tapes, she was so shocked because there were things, quote, some of the tapes had things I would have never expected. The gay parties are one thing, but the young boys, like the 2 hip hop stars formerly managed by Diddy and the then 18-year-old pop star, I would have never known. The book publisher is claiming that it was the friends that gave him this thumbnail, the friends that provided this memoir. The friends also provided copies of these alleged sex tapes so that he knew that it was legitimate. And the final entry of the memoir from Kim Porter, before she mysteriously got pneumonia and didn't survive it as a 47-year-old, is her dramatically telling her friends, quote, he got me.
In this complex web of power and influence, Usher stood as both a mentor and a witness, shaped in part by his own early experiences within Diddy's world. Having navigated that environment as a young artist, Usher had a front-row seat to the darker truths hidden behind the industry's polished image. That insight now casts a heavy shadow over his role in Bieber's early rise. Former associate Freddie P has been especially vocal, claiming the mentorship Bieber received was anything but nurturing. Instead, Freddie alleges the young star was plunged into a culture where inappropriate behavior was normalized, leaving him exposed and easily controlled.
He was standing at a table. They say the shirt that he wore to the VMA say something about God is great. But in the video, they got pictures of him standing in the background while a woman is being sexually pleased, but she under the influence. And they say it's white substance on her nose. You can clearly see that. And they saying in another video, they have him and an A-list, a young male, having sex. And it was an alleged allegations that it was being a tape was being shopped around with him and a young male. I'm not accusing nobody, but if you look at the way Justin Bieber look at Puffy, he hates that nigga. He hates that nigga. That man's face ain't just dropped soon as he wanted to go get a wife. That man's whole fucking face, that's some medical. That man young and healthy, man. But he know, he terrified. You remember when I said a lot of people happy you locked up right now, Puff? He's one of them. That's why I'm speaking. He's one of them. One of the people that you terrified who couldn't get from under your claws. That's why Puffy trying to help me get back out here. He know these bitches want to see me fall. They want to see this. They been waiting on this. He know how many people been waiting on this. His kids know. They feeling it. Nobody calling. Nobody trying to. You know what I'm saying? And all the people that wasn't yours, were you grooming that little boy? I don't even want to start those conversations because that's not your child. You know what I'm saying? And for you to keep him that close, it's like you kept him that close because he might got your secrets because he's not your child. So if he's not your child and you that type of person with that type of character, you don't mind actually doing it to him when he finally reaches a certain age because he's not yours. And you know in your mind he's not yours. And now you keep him real close to you. You make sure he don't go to his daddy. Why? You make sure he's separated with him and you provide him with everything he wants. Why? You got one of them little Michael Jackson secrets. He got one of them secrets that he can't tell nobody because his legacy, I mean, his manhood gonna be, and not only that, his brother no gonna look at him crazy. Only Puffy know, only God and Puffy.
You're talking about Quincy, right?
I don't know. All I'm gonna say is, I don't know.
I'll be sure, son.
All I'm gonna say is, who's infatuated with another man's son like that? Like you, that seemed like grooming to me. I got, oh, that's his daughter's brothers. Get the fuck out of here, huh? Plenty of daughters got.
The unfolding drama deepens with explosive claims from industry heavyweight Suge Knight, whose own turbulent legacy lends gravity to his words. Knight alleges that Diddy's behavior wasn't an anomaly, but part of a broader, systematic effort to control and exploit rising talent. Whispers now connect powerful names, Clive Davis, Russell Simmons, and Andre Harrell, to this shadowy network. While no formal charges have been filed against these executives, their association casts a chilling light on an already scandalous narrative, raising unsettling questions about how deep the exploitation runs within the very core of the music.
Has been getting this out in different ways. You know, you could see it in his music and just what he's been trying to say without saying it. So, I mean, I think everybody knows what you just stated to be true.
I mean, you had grown men would take Justin Bieber. A grown man take Justin Bieber when he was young. I would say, Suge, you know, don't have one of your guys do nothing to him. He a good young man, but him and Puffy got a thing. He had a thing. He said, he gave me a look like, you know. And I thought about it. The way he rolled his eyes at me, it wasn't like somebody homie rolled it. It was like I beat up somebody, man. Like I beat his, you know, he the bitch. Like somebody to roll their eyes, like you beat my boyfriend up. I ain't speaking to you.
Really?
It's one of those, right? Yeah, for sure. And the crazy thing about it is like, Leslie, his mother, and everybody else said the same thing. Well, it was wrong, but if we go and get Puffy in trouble behind that, Usher wouldn't be Usher. He'd be known as the guy who got molested.
They didn't want protection. They wanted profit. Justin Bieber's meteoric rise to global fame was jump-started by early ties to Diddy and Usher, once framed as a golden opportunity. But as damning revelations surface, that narrative is unraveling. Diddy's deepening legal troubles have cast a long shadow, forcing the industry into damage control. Behind the scenes, Bieber is reportedly being urged to quietly distance himself from the scandal. His silence is deafening, suggesting inner conflict and a painful reckoning with the truth. That the fame he was promised may have come at the cost of his innocence.
I remember recently going back to visit the pregnancy home that I lived at the whole time that I was pregnant with my son. And seeing the girls, and they just had so many questions. And one of the questions was, how am I going to do this? What do I have to offer? You know, they didn't have anything. And I remember saying, you have love. You look at all these different countries all over the world where they have nothing, and they are some of the happiest people in the world. You know, you have some families that have everything, and they have some of the most miserable kids in the world because they don't value love as the most important thing. And so I think that's really important, is to really encourage teens to really love their kids and know that that's enough. I also want to encourage teen moms to really utilize the resources available to them. There's so many amazing programs. There's even groups that you can get, support groups that you can join, and things that you can do to really...
I need your support, I need your help. I want to get counsel. But those kinds of boundaries established, I think hopefully going to, make this a more sustainable relationship. This is my third one.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make certain that I don't take this ring off.
Yeah, I know that's right. Amen. I love that. And I love that it is a balance in that regard because, hey, sometimes it's difficult when the person doesn't know anything about what you do.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think for me, it was always difficult to figure out, do I want to date somebody that's in the industry and that knows what's going on? Or does that not give me enough of a way to be outside of the industry enough? You know how that is as entertainment.
You don't want that.
It's like you don't want the other one.
You don't want that. You don't want somebody who's oblivious.
Really?
Yeah. You want somebody who does understand who you are and knows the dynamic that comes with it, because there's going to be times where it becomes complicated and you're going to need them to get it and create balance. If they're ration.
Doesn't it then feel too Hollywood sometimes?
Well, Hollywood, because I understand who I'm dating and I know what I got myself into before I started. Nah, I think if you want to live that life, you can, but at some point, she or he will feel like, oh, I'm not included. I don't understand. Oh, you know what? You're right. I don't understand. I don't work it.
Amid the whirlwind of accusations, the presence of Justin Bieber's mother, Patty Mallet, looms large. Her life, shaped by early struggles and impossible choices, adds a haunting layer to the scandal. Driven by hope, Patty signed Bieber's first record deal when he was still a child, unwittingly opening the door to an industry rife with predatory practices. While her intentions were pure, critics now question whether she sensed, deep down, that the glittering promise of fame might carry a devastating cost for her son.
Back in Harlem. I heard it from some music executives back in Harlem. And I'm not going to speak on their name. They doing programs and everything like that, and they may be doing something, they may speak on it themselves. But I heard it from some music executives.
Where did you hear it?
Bro, you know how people be talking and we was around some people, something like that, and then some people might say, yo, I don't F with that dude. And at the time, I didn't even know who the F Usher was. You know what I'm saying? It was one of those type of situations. And when people say, yo, man, I don't F with them niggas, man, I'm getting out that industry and everything like that. Puff sent this little kid to the hospital. How he sent him to the hospital? Man, nigga was bleeding from the butt. And that's what was said. But I didn't even have a name for the kid at the time. Then you heard that's a touchy situation, man. You know what I'm saying? Because I had a certain feeling and I felt a certain way when Usher got on Shay Shay, and I don't mean to mention other people's platforms, but he got on Shay Shay and he mentioned how great and how good Puff taught him and everything. You know what I'm saying? About the business, right? I know, and people know, that was around in that time that Puff and Usher did have a situation. And that situation led Usher to the hospital. Now I let Usher explain that to y'all. I let Usher tell that story. But how dare you say a man that groomed you, you gonna give him a pass?